Hello, welcome back to my channel. And welcome back to the Dumbish Book Club. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Hayden.
And today we're going to be talking about Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm just going to put this down here, and if you're wondering why I have this edition, this bright edge is called to me. Do I need to own this book? After the second reread, I can say no. But you know what? I'm nothing if not a glutton for punishment, so I decided to make us read Fourth Wing because, well, I knew that people would want it. I knew that they would want to see it, a little Christmas tree. Not our Christmas tree, I can tell you that for
I'll tell you, this did not get me in the Christmas spirit.
Where to even begin? Okay, so I read this book back in June because I wanted to see what the hype was about. And I was like, all right, like maybe this is going to be another ACOTAR. Like maybe this is going to be another fantasy romance that I can really get behind. I can really sink my teeth into, get really horned up for.
When did this come out?
Recently. Very recently.
Like this year?
Maybe.
Came out sometime this year.
The second one came out this year. This might have come out in 2022. No, it came out this year.
2 books back to back. Wow.
Probably ill-advised. I've heard the second one's terrible. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the first one, which is also terrible. Hayden, what were you thinking going into this when I told you this is going to be like a dragon fantasy? Were you excited for that? Were you dying for that?
Not particularly, and not for any reason per se. I'm just, you know.
Just know you're typically punished in the Dumb Bitch Book Club.
Oh, well, I mean, there's that. I wasn't even thinking about that, but if I'm just thinking about it being a dragon fantasy, I don't dislike dragons necessarily.
It doesn't get hard for dragons.
Yeah, definitely not. It's not something that I'm, like, really, like, raring
Which
for.
Which is interesting. I feel the same way. I'm not anti-dragon. I definitely don't seek those sorts of stories out, though, and I feel like they've become more popular.
Obviously, I thought it was cool the first time that they were introduced in Game of Thrones. That was cool.
It was a spectacle, for sure.
Like, it was the first time that, like,
you'd seen, like,
really good CGI dragons, right? Like, and they made them, like, real scary or whatever. That was, like, cool. But then by the end of the series, I was, like, so over the dragons thing.
And going into this, I was also already just over the fucking dragons. Yeah. I guess I should give you some context. I read it in June. I thought it was mediocre. I wasn't, like, super fucking tuned in, though. I listened to the audiobook, which I listened to at a rapid clip because the narrator had a cold, and it was awful to listen to, so I tried to get through it as quickly as possible.
See, I didn't notice that. You said this to me before I started listening to it.
It's like the gulps and the, like, snorts and stuff.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't hear it.
I wasn't a fan. And I probably wouldn't have noticed it had people not pointed it out to me.
Oh, someone else pointed it out to you.
Well, at least I thought that, and then I got there and I was like, oh boy.
Because I was like, how could you possibly notice it at 3 times speed? Yeah.
You would think that, but that's how bad it was. I tried to get through it as quickly as possible, and I feel like I maybe missed some of the story, and maybe that was why I didn't like it. So I wanted to give it another shot because I say it often, I want to be a bitch that likes things. I want to be in on what is popular and cool, and I just often am not, sadly. So I wish I could say that that changed this time. It did not.
The other thing that I was not necessarily looking forward to that you had mentioned before I read it was just that you told me that not only was it a dragon thing, but they talk to the dragons. The dragons talk. I already knew that that was going to go in a direction that I did not like. Nothing against talking dragons necessarily, but...
Let's start at the beginning. Alright, so this book opens up with our main bitch, Violet. She is weak, she is pale-haired, and she thought her whole life she was going to be a motherfucking scribe. She thought she was gonna be doing research, writing shit down, staying in a hovel, fucking dark, no air, wearing robes and shit.
Just gonna go ahead and bring this up because it's gonna be something that I will probably reference throughout this video. I so hate the trope of anyone who reads must be weak and fragile and, like, only want to do scholarly stuff. We're introduced to her character as, like, she's only ever wanted to be a scribe. Oh, and she's like that character in SpongeBob that has glass bones and paper skin.
Also, she's got ombre hair naturally, so not to fucking...
What is that?
Ombre hair?
Yeah.
It's where your hair's not all one color, it kind of, like, fades into a different color.
Oh, I was thinking of, like, ombre.
Fucking stupid. And the reason it matters that she's a weak-ass bitch is because she's actually not gonna be a scribe. She's gonna be a dragon rider.
Yeah.
Her mom kind of, like, I don't want to say, like, offhandedly is like, yo, bitch, your job that you thought you were gonna do your whole life has changed. But sort of. She's kind of, like, just told that she's going to do this. Is it because her brother's dead? I don't really know, but...
No, it's just because her mom is a general. Every Sorengale will be a rider is her kind of thing. And, like, previously her dad, since her dad was a scribe, she was, like, kind of gonna be able to be a scribe, you know, trained up that way. But then her dad's no longer around, so her mom is like, you're not gonna be a weak-ass little bitch. You're gonna be a dragon rider.
Ill-advised. But she does decide to go to this war college. Actually, not so much decide as is forced to go to this very cool war college where she's gonna learn how to ride fucking dragons, I guess. The way that the dragonry? The way that the dragons work in this society is that they're scary as fuck and they will kill you if they don't like you, and you bond to a particular dragon if that dragon wants to be bonded to you.
Yeah, they choose you.
They choose you. And there's like a chance, obviously, that Violet won't get a dragon because she's a weak-ass bitch.
There's like so many challenges that happen before you even get the chance to like see a dragon to possibly bond them, and like all of the challenges either involve you messing up and dying, like falling to your death or something like that, or someone killing you. Yeah. So there's a good chance that you don't even make it to that point where you might possibly be bonded by a dragon, and then even if you do get to that point, the dragons might just kill you. There's a lot of chance for death.
At the beginning of the story, I guess, beyond just being introduced to Violet, we also get to meet other people at this war college, and we get to really see the brutality up close and personal, and get introduced to, I guess, the side characters that end up not mattering at fucking all.
That's a fact. She quickly makes friends with like 2 or 3 people in line, I think 2 of which die like pretty immediately. And
yeah.
The only one, I guess, who survives end up being, I guess, her best friend-ish throughout the rest of the series. Rhiannon, something like that. Kind of useless.
We also get to meet, I guess, 3 dudes who become integral players in the story, if we want to call them that. We got Jack, who's the big bad, who has no personality and only exists to, I guess, be like that threat against our girl. Then we have the 2 potential love interests, because of course there's going to be 2, and of course it's going to be a love triangle. We've got Dane, who is this guy that she's been friends with her whole life, and she sees him and she's like, oh my god, I didn't realize you were here. They've got this like connection, and throughout the story there's kind of like this will they won't they, like is she going to end up with this guy? And then there's also Xaden Ryerson, which I'm sorry is the most fucking Chad name you could come up with for a guy in a fantasy novel, but Xaden, he's a bad guy. His parents were part of like the Rebel Alliance. I can't remember what the fuck they were called because I don't care. He doesn't like her and he doesn't like her mom.
I think you need to mention why he doesn't like her and her mom.
Sure, her mom killed his whole family, but like...
Yeah, and forced him to watch, and also forced him and all of the other children of people who were in the rebellion to involuntarily become part of the dragon riding school where they will probably die.
He doesn't like her, he's not a big fan, and those are the people that we get introduced to, and you're like, oh shit, like, how's she gonna make it? She has no skills, and she's a loser.
Very quickly, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on Jack as a character. I really don't care about spoilers here. Jack dies eventually, right? Like, it's just...
It is what it is.
It is what it is, right?
Almost all the fucking characters in a book die.
Jack, we're introduced to pretty immediately as just, like, a piece of shit who just likes killing people or something, but also, for some reason, just has, like, a vendetta out against Violet. I really hated Jack as a character, not in, like, I think that he was a good person to hate. No, I hated him as a character because he was so poorly written that I had no reason to feel any way about him aside from the thought of, I guess this guy's a murderous psychopath and just likes killing. Like, why does he have a vendetta against Violet in particular? Where does all of his rage come from? They could have very easily given him some kind of backstory.
Even if it was like a fucking throwaway sentence.
Yes, that gave him some sort of reason to have this murderous rage inside of him, or want to climb to the top and like become a dragon rider or so on and so forth. They give him nothing except for just, random hate and I guess a little bit of strength. There really is nothing to his and Violet's rivalry throughout the book. They're just rivals until she kills him, and he ends up being the first person that she's ever killed. I will just say now, his death scene was so fucking anticlimactic.
Yeah, I didn't give a fuck. Didn't give a single fuck. I think that kind of touches on a good point that is sort of a recurring problem in this beginning part of the story. It's a twofold problem. One is that you're not really given much introduction into this world or why we're going to a fucking war college, right? Like, cool, dragons are super neat. We hear about this like rebellion, obviously, where there were some people who didn't want to do what they were supposed to do. We have no context for what the rebellion is or what the fuck they were rebelling against. We don't know anything really about the world at all.
We know nothing about this country or why they're at war. The only thing that we know is like how the dragon college works and how the dragon bonding works.
Yeah. It's basically like if you turned on a television show in like the 3rd or 4th episode and you were in one set for the entire show and you just never learned anything more about the greater world, which makes no fucking sense. So you have that, which is already a problem. And then on top of that, you have characters who mean nothing at all. There are a couple of characters who end up with a semblance of a personality or a semblance of like an impact, I guess, on Violet's life, which is important since she's the main character. But the majority of the characters we're introduced to are really really like half-baked villains, people that like have rage for no reason, people that are like against Violet, and when they die it doesn't matter. Even the like tentative friendships she makes when those people die, you're kind of like, okay.
Even like her best friend, I would say,
I don't remember her personality at all.
Well, because she doesn't have a personality. Her only purpose as a character is to be like, you go girl, basically the entire book. Like anytime that Violet does something and like doesn't die, basically she's like, oh my god, you did it. Or whenever she like possibly is going to be like hooking up with someone, she's like, oh yeah, you go. I bet that was hot, wasn't it?
Gatekeep, girl boss, murder people.
That's basically her whole point as a character. I would agree with you. There is not enough character building with a majority of the characters, and we're also introduced to so many characters that literally mean nothing. But on top of that, even people that we don't see do anything aside from die, I think that it would have been, in my opinion, more meaningful even for there to just be like a bunch of people dying around her like there already is, but she's just like, oh my god, there's so many like kids dying. I didn't even get to know this person's name and I just had to watch them die.
Yeah.
I think that would have been just as powerful, but instead what we get is she like sees someone die or something like that and she's like, oh man, what was his name? I think he sits behind me in chemistry class or something, and then someone else will say that person's name like 2 sentences later and she's like, oh yeah, Chad, I totally forgot. As if we've ever had any sort of reason to know who Chad is. Like, that's just so useless.
You start seeing the cracks pretty early on in this book. It's not like it starts strong or you're really curious about much. You're just fucking confused, I think, for a decent amount of the beginning of the book. And as things carry on, Violet is showing us what being bookish really can do. I'm recalling a particular time where she is supposed to fight someone who she's scared of fighting because she thinks she will lose to this person and potentially die in the ring, and she ends up poisoning them before the fight can take place. And her plot is foiled. Someone figures out that she has poisoned this person. It doesn't go great for her, but we're supposed to be impressed by her knowledge and skills.
Well, yeah, because that's like her whole thing is that she poisons like everyone before she fights them. Yeah. She poisons like 8 people in a row.
Yeah, but I mean like the one that she gets caught.
She's supposed to be like so good at timing out the poisons that they don't show effects until they're in the middle of the fight with her. They're not even sure what's going on, but this person, she like mistimes it, and so this person like isn't able to show up to the fight because they're fucking poisoned. And so she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just sit down then, you know, and not fight. And Zayden's like, no, it's okay, fight me instead. He's smart, quote unquote, and he like sees what she's been doing. None of the instructors or anyone else are smart enough to know what she's been doing. No one's ever done this before in the college.
She's smart. Everybody with brain, not good at fighting. Everyone with fight, no good brain.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
I hate it so much. I hate it so much. Something that I wish that they did in this book. I wish that at some point they basically like trained her, or she like trained herself into like having strength.
She does.
Not really. Not really. And it's something that I will get into more and more as the story progresses, but she is basically never able to do anything on her own in this book. Someone else, almost always a man, does everything for her, steps in to help her out, and I think that that is so poor to the character. You know, like it makes the character
kind of against what the author is like probably trying to go for.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. They could have made her like kind of, really struggle and like learn to, you know, fight and stuff like that. And I guess she does get a little bit better than when she first arrives.
I don't know what you're talking about, because I think at the end of the book, she's wearing a dress with a slit and comments that her legs are so muscly and she wants to show them off. So clearly a bitch be putting in work. No, I totally agree with you. There are like moments where she is trying to like train during this time that we're about to get into, but it doesn't really seem to actually help her in like a fitness sense. Basically, it's like, she's basically like a bodybuilder instead of like a person who trains for functional strength. You know what I mean? It's like, she looked good, ass be fat, but like, what are you doing with that?
She should have died at pretty much every turn if there wasn't someone helping her out, or she wasn't kind of like weaseling her way through it by poisoning someone, when every single other person that she's in this war college with actually survived all of this shit, is like actually strong enough and I guess is like deserving of being alive still and going through all of these trials and can like hold their own in pretty much every regard, and she definitely cannot.
Despite all of her trials and many tribulations, Violet ends up making it to, I don't know what the fuck day they call it, but it's the day where you get your dragon.
The threshing.
Which, what the fuck does that mean? I thought that's what you did with like crops.
Yeah.
You get there and you're like kind of surrounded by these crazy beasts, and they can like, you know, sniff on you and shit. I guess see if you're ready. They bond with you. And the scandal here is that the biggest, baddest dragon that's there bonds with Violet. And not only that, but a little bitch dragon also bonds with Violet, which is unheard of. No one ever bonds with two dragons. And a lot of people were trying to like kill the baby dragon, but since she saved it, she gets to be bonded with it. And this, I guess, kind of marks a transition in the story because, yeah, everybody wanted to kill the stupid bitch earlier because of who her mom was and because she's so weak, and that's like offensive to people, I guess. But now people want to kill her because she's bonded to a dragon and there's like 40 people who are not. And she's bonded to this dragon, but apparently the bond kind of grows over time. So if anyone has any hope of kind of taking over her dragon, they need to kind of kill her off pretty quickly. And so she's having to be on guard and like watch out for herself. Eventually someone tries to come into her bedroom and
which you're supposedly not allowed to do. You're allowed to kill someone at any time except for while they're asleep.
yeah, which
Cool rules.
very,
I love
very
these.
cool
Yeah,
rules.
yeah.
But of course, she's saved. She learns a little bit more about dragon powers when she's being saved because one of the dragons, the baby dragon, has like time-stopping abilities, and so she's able to like not get stabbed. And then also Xaden comes in and is like, "Yo, girl, I save you," and he like murders someone for her, which is like
He
so-
murders like 6 people for
Okay,
her.
but that's like very sexy. So
Yeah.
I just needed to point that part out because that's very hot.
So I guess we can go ahead and mention the reason why Xaden knew this is going on is because Xaden's dragon is mates with her dragon, and they can communicate with each other, which then also allows her to be able to communicate with Xaden and Xaden's dragon, as well as the other way around, which normally does not happen. Normally, apparently, dragons only communicate with their one rider that they're bonded with.
Dragons, not only can you like speak to them in your head and shit, but also because of your bond with them, because of the magic that dragons have, your innate magic within yourself kind of starts showing up. I think it's called your signet power or some shit
Yeah.
like that. Our girl has a power that we find out about. Is it in the throes of passion or is it
When they're in the middle of like, I guess like a war game type simulation challenge
Yes.
thing, her team is against Jack, the main villain's team. Jack kills or tries to kill someone that is her friend, and she uses her time stopping power to like stop her friend from being killed. And then she's like so angry because she thinks that maybe her friend is like actually dead, that she kind of discovers her signet power is calling down lightning from the heavens. Basically just like strikes the tower that Jack is standing on, and he falls off and dies. That's how he fucking dies. If I'm being 100% honest, after the time stopping thing, I really thought that her signet power was going to be a lot fucking cooler than lightning. Yeah.
We're kind of getting out of order here because I think before that happens, we get the dragon fucking. And lest we
Yes.
forget the dragon fucking, because I think to me, that was when I knew there was no return or a chance for this book to be good for me.
You already had mentioned that to me before I started the book, which, you know, bit of a spoiler, I guess. I really didn't care at the time and still don't care now, but I think it might have had a different effect on me had I just like read it in the moment.
And by
you know?
different effect, you mean like
I would have been
guffaws and giggles?
I
or?
would no, I would have been like, God damn.
I'm sure you were like that anyway. Xaden has Lady Dragon. She has Man Dragon. They put their dragon parts together, and that actually makes Xaden and our girl horny. The dragon's horniness transfers to them, and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm bricked up right now. And he's like smoking some like weed, basically, trying to just like keep his boner down. And she comes over to him and she's like, I just can't fight this feeling anymore. And they do some stuff. They touched parts. I know that. That happened. Actually, kind of soon after that happens too. I have some notes because I knew this was going to be a fucking train wreck. Dane kisses our girl. So we've had this building tension between not only Xaden and Violet, but also Violet and Dane. Dane is not the wing leader. He is the squad leader. Is that what he is? Dane's a guy, and she knows him from her past. And so
Yeah.
they have this connection, and he's like looking out for her, but he doesn't really believe she can do what she can. He's like at one point trying to
Which is fair because she can't.
but
Yeah.
he is trying to like get her to go back to being a scribe. Like he's trying to do what he can to get her the fuck out because he doesn't like think she can do anything.
Well, and he doesn't want to watch her die, is the thing.
Yeah.
He's like not allowed to help in most circumstances, and so he would kind of just have to sit there and watch like his childhood friend die. I'm not defending him at all because I fucking hate this
He
character.
is so annoying. Anyway, they kiss and she's like, I don't feel anything. Panties dry.
I think this is a solid opportunity for me to mention This book to me is just a worse Shadow and Bone in a lot of ways. We have...
I think what you mean to say is that it is a worse YA fantasy because there are so many YA fantasies similar to Shadow and Bone. Though that is the one that you have read. So.
Well, to me, it's just like the very specific plot points of like girl who is like special for no reason, basically, like something out of her control, and she doesn't really think that she's like special, has to go to some kind of like school to help her powers out where people hate her and want to kill her. Also, we have her childhood best friend, love interest, and guy who's more powerful than childhood best friend, who is seemingly evil, but over the course we find out or like think more and more maybe he's not evil, and she's got to choose between the two of them, and you think like, oh, she should be with the good guy, her like childhood best friend person. Then we get more and more into it, and like he's kind of a piece of shit too, and so you're like, oh, which piece of shit is she gonna end up with, you know?
Which half-baked turd?
Yeah, like Dane is just such a horrible character. Basically, aside from the very beginning when she's like excited to see him again for the first time in a couple of years,
he's just annoying. He's an annoyance the entire book.
He's annoying, and he's basically doing the mansplaining like man savior thing to her the whole time, you know? He's like, you can't do this. I'll help you out in any way that I can, and by help you out I mean do whatever I can to get you out of here because you can't do this.
After this happens, we also have Xaden basically stepping in to help our girl, and so he's kind of, I don't want to say taking the place of Dane, but kind of, instead of offering to like get her to be a scribe, basically saying like, oh, you're too weak to do this, we have Xaden saying, I don't think you're too weak. Well, I mean, you are, but I'm gonna help you gain skills so you can do what you want to do, which is be a dragon rider. So he gets her like hooked up with this bitch, and she's gonna do some like leg exercises, I guess.
And at first, his reasoning for doing this is because she bonded his dragon's mate. The dragon that she has now a bond to had a rider previously that died, and it took this dragon a really long time to, I guess, accept the bond of a human again because they were bonded for a really long time, and so this dragon was like really emotionally fucked up or whatever. Xaden is afraid that this dragon won't be able to take another rider like dying. It won't survive, and his dragon is mated to that dragon and like basically won't survive it. He's basically like, you're tied to me forever now, so I have to do what I can to make sure that you don't die, is like the initial justification for it.
And she like doesn't know how to feel about that, but obviously over time she's like, you're just so fucking sexy, man, and I love you so much. And I say that because she says that shit a lot, and I do mean a lot.
This happens a lot in different books that I've read for you, and I personally don't understand it. The kind of person that I am, right? Like, if I don't like a person, that transfers into my thought about their attractiveness. If I don't like you, my brain is kind of gonna like pick out things to not like about your physique or like your face or something like that.
Yeah,
and like, I won't be like, oh, I fucking hate this guy, but also I want to climb him like a tree.
I do think that's like one of the things that is probably the most unbelievable if you really think about the enemies to lovers thing. There's not very many people in my life who I like hate and think are attractive. Yeah. I mean, there's nobody. And then also when I'm trying to think of like celebrities maybe who like I don't like their personality, or I've heard they're a bad person, but like I think they're hot. That's not a thing either.
No, it's
like
not a thing.
if you're a bad person, I don't find you very sexy.
Yeah, if you're ugly on the inside, that transfers to me to being ugly on the outside, more so than the other way around. I'm not going to try to like find things to like about you just because you're hot, you know? It doesn't work that way for me. It only works the other direction.
Exactly. But that's not enough to stop our violence, which is what he calls her, violence. Yeah, which is just so sweet and romantic. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't underestimate her, okay? Because she does have powers. I mean, really, the majority of this part of the book is her spent training up, getting to know our guy Xaden. Also, I should mention that this is kind of around the time where that thing happened where people try to kill her in her sleep, and he assigned someone to, like, basically bodyguard her, which, like, we know that person's fate, right? Like, I mean...
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't.
But I mean, like, I feel like we knew that he would die.
I guess. I honestly, I thought that he would be, like, one of those characters that dies like next book, you know? Yeah. Like they would like build him up to die for more than just like the last third of the book, you know? Yeah, it's not like that happens very early in the book, so you really don't get that long to learn about Liam.
His parents, I guess, were all like murdered in front of him too, which we learned. And I think like we're building sympathy too for like the rebels at this point. Not only do we like learn more about Liam's backstory, but we also learn about Xaden as he's like opening up, you know, like he's opening up his heart to Violet. He shares that the scars on his back are for like the lashings he took so that the kids of the rebels wouldn't be murdered. They would at least get to go to the dragon school.
He took responsibility for all of them or something. Yeah. And we're also kind of learning at this point, we we already knew that her mom was a piece of shit, and it kind of seems like this whole society's kind of fucking stupid. You get no backstory as to, like, what this country is even about, like, who they're at war with, what is going on. You just know that it's, like, dragons versus griffins, which griffins can't breathe fire, so, like, how the fuck would this even be, like, a feasible war? Birds versus fire-breathing lizards? But we're starting to see more and more that her country is kind of fucked up, and, like, her mom is a real fucked up piece of shit, because she kind of executed all of these people and made their kids watch, and then also forcibly made them kind of, like, their options were either you die or you go to dragon school, where you probably die as well, and hopefully you die.
But you know what's better than death? Fucking.
Yeah.
And we should talk about that.
I think they did enough of that.
I was listening to the last part of this book as I went and grabbed myself lunch, and there's just really nothing more humiliating than, like, having this play Bluetooth through my speakers and have to have it, like, loud enough to where I can hear it over the road noise, but I just hear him talking about, like, oh, your pussy's so juicy, girl. I just think about it all the time. And that's after they have sex, which is unbearably long. It is so long.
It is the longest, I'm fairly certain, because I can't remember anything like this, it is the longest sex scene in a book that I have had to read for this shit, which means the longest sex scene that I've ever had to sit through. I was listening to the audiobook of this at 1.5 speed, which obviously is no 3 speed, right? It's no 3 times.
I bumped it to 3 too, I'm not gonna lie.
1.5 for me, I was listening, the sex scene started, I'm like cleaning up after dinner. It lasted for the entire like 15 minutes that I was cleaning up the kitchen at 1.5 speed. I literally popped into the bedroom when it started, or I texted you when it started or something like that, and I was like, oh no, we're at the sex scene. Because, you know, I knew it was coming at some point, right?
Yeah.
And then I popped in afterwards and I was like, this is the worst and longest sex scene. It's still going. I can't believe this.
Yeah, I didn't love it. And as I was listening to this, as I was torturing myself with this, it really just got me to think about what the point of this book is. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that more later, but also it just really struck me. Like, I really think this author was just trying to like build shit around those characters so that she could write about these people having sex. And like, I, in theory, like the idea of an enemies to lover sex scene, but like, they're not really enemies at this point.
Yeah, they're not even enemies at the beginning. It's one of those things where like, she thinks that he hates her. I don't even know that he did hate her at the beginning. He kind of looks at her like, oh, you're the daughter of the woman that killed my family and made me watch. He, I think, knows that it's wrong to punish the children for the sins of the parents, right? Like, he's lived that firsthand, so I don't think that he's immediately like, I'm gonna fuck you up for what your parents did, you know? It's not even enemies to lovers.
It was not what I would consider erotic, but everybody has different tastes, and clearly a lot of people were really into this, and so I don't understand it, but I was gonna say, but I respect it. I don't respect it. I don't.
I think one of the reasons why this is popular, and I could be wrong, right? And I'm almost definitely wrong, but to me, this seems popular in like the way that this might be a lot of people's first book with a sex scene in it. This feels very much like the gateway drug from YA into like adult fantasy. It felt like a book that was built around the fact that this book was going to have a sex scene in it.
Yes.
And
it definitely does.
It feels like it's catered to people who aren't used to reading a sex scene.
I kind of struggle with that, I think, a little bit. I try to understand, I guess, where people are coming from whenever they decide to pick up a book and, like, what people are looking for. And I felt that way with ACOTAR, right? I enjoyed ACOTAR. I liked the one where they fuck in the mountain shake. I think that one's fun. But I definitely got that feeling when I read that book, too, and, like, tried to understand what really excited people. And it was because there's a sex scene in the book. And I think a lot of people, go from reading YA where there's none of that, and you're always like, ooh, is it gonna happen? And it never does. It's YA. To reading a book that does have like one sex scene and you're like, ooh. The thing though is that the sex isn't good and the fantasy isn't good.
And it's way too long.
And
my goodness.
Say what you want about ACOTAR, but at least there was effort made with the plot in those books. I'm not saying they're phenomenal, but the first 2 books do have a plot line.
I would rather read any of those books than, I don't want to say continue this series.
I feel that way too.
It's like, even take out the way too long sex scene, right? The rest of this book, it's nothing but violence and yelling and crying or screaming. It's like nothing but raw emotion moments. There is no up and down of emotion or feeling or anything. It's all the way up here, which means that none of it has any feeling to me.
There's no contrast with the emotions, and there's also not a crescendo of the plot line either. There's so many like moments of violence and like big things that happen that when we get to the big thing that happens at the end of the story, it does not feel meaningful. It doesn't feel special, and you're just like, this is more of the same. And I guess we can move to that so that we can kind of, talk about our final thoughts and feelings, of which we have many. Basically, the ending of this book, we have this like kind of graduation ceremony, and after the ceremony kind of happens and they have more sex, and by sex I mean he eats her pussy, we have them all being like kind of called out to do some like mock training kind of thing, or like this mock...
It's like a
5-day
It's the
war game.
final like test basically of like your graduation.
And we get this kind of reveal that Xaden is still a part of the Rebel Alliance. Again, I don't know what the fuck it's called and I don't really care. And that he's actually kind of like in talks with the Griffin Riders, and like they're actually not bad, and that the legends are all true. The shit that like our girl was being told were like fairy tales.
This shit made me so mad. Okay, so
you want to break it down for us?
The way that this is revealed is, some like they're doing their thing in the war game. These Griffin Riders show up and she's like, oh my god, there's Griffin Riders. This is just supposed to be like a war game, like a test. You know?
Like we're not actually supposed to meet people in the wild like this.
Yeah. And Xaden's like, just trust me. And then he just starts talking to him and they're like, do you have the shipment? And he's like, no, we don't have a ship. We weren't supposed to be ready for a couple of days or something like that. And they're like, we can't wait a couple of days, something to that extent.
It's clear to Violet that they're like kind of in leagues with each other.
Yeah, and so she's really mad because she's like, oh, you're a traitor, blah, blah, blah. We find out that all of the stories are true, which the thing that made me so mad is, sure, we've been introduced to the fact that Violet's dad gave her a book of like old fables and tales of mythical beings or something when she was younger, and that's coming back from literally the first chapter. That's coming back at the very fucking end of the book. And not only that, we're not introduced to anything that's inside of that book. So it's not like they've like made mention of some creature throughout the book and then we come to find out that it's real. Literally the sentence is something along the lines of like, wait, so you're telling me that they're real? The venom? The creatures that blah, 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 blah. Like that's how we're introduced to the whole concept of like what is supposedly the main conflict of this book. It's like in a weird exposition moment of like, oh, well, we've all known about this creature for this whole time.
But you, as the punk-ass reader, don't know anything.
Yeah. So get on board, all right? We also find out that the rebellion people have known about this the whole time. The whole rebellion was about the fact that her country, I guess, tries to, like, hide the fact that these creatures exist and, like, shield the rest of the people from the effects of them and shit. I'm honestly not even sure what the fuck these creatures do, if I'm being honest, because it happens so late in the book.
Yeah, they're people who have been corrupted by magic because they don't channel the magic through a creature.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's like you're not doing it through a griffin or a dragon, and so this is corrupting you as a person and it's making you evil, and then they have to like have like kind of a showdown. But I was fucking confused at the showdown because I feel like the dragons were trying to fight the griffins, but I thought that the dragons and griffins were
No. The dragons weren't fighting the griffins. They were fighting wyverns, which are two-legged dragons that are like spawned from evil by the venom. Yeah, exactly. The whole rebellion was because these people were trying to expose the fact that her government knew and or like provide these particular weapons that they have or materials that they have to like ward off the venom, trying to supply these to people who are outside of the walls of this town to help them, because apparently everyone else in the world is basically under constant attack. Her government was like covering all of that up, and her mom was one of the key figures in covering all of that up. They know that Xaden and the rest of the people were kind of on to them, or, like helping out the people on the outside, and they're basically like, you make a choice, you can either be loyal to us and like come back and like do the war games, or you can stay and make sure that this entire village doesn't die right now, and then basically you're gonna be like hunted forever and like out,
Yeah, so that's a fun end to the book. Oh, also, I am gonna spoil this, so I'm even spoiling everything at this point.
Yeah, spoiler alert, skip ahead like 20 seconds if you don't want to hear this. Her fucking brother's alive.
And we've been hearing about him throughout the whole book and about how if he were alive, things would be so much different. But apparently he is alive, and he's been working on the other side. Also, it's building the conflict for the next book, which is that she is going to work with the Rebel Alliance or whatever, but she is not trusting Xaden because he lied to her, and so he doesn't get that good punani, but he is going to get her support, which I guess is like, great. I think that Xaden's going to be endgame. I think she's going to be with him.
Oh, for sure.
Unfortunately, apparently this is going to be like a 5-book series, and I don't know how you are going to make make that work with this sort of like romantic tension because there is none. They've
Yeah.
already admitted their love to each other. I really didn't like this. I didn't like it the first time. I didn't like it the second time. And I was just reminded of how fucking corny this thing is. Like, it's so fucking corny. Like, whenever her and Xaden, like, quash the beef.
Squash the beef or like squash their beefs together.
You know, a little bit of both. But once the tension's broken there, he is corny as fuck. He's like, I just think about your slick heat all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. And we do get his POV in the last chapter, and he's like, I would do anything for you, baby girl.
Oh, that was another thing that, like,
took you by surprise and you didn't like it.
oh, I hated it so much. Oh my goodness. It was so weird. It took me out, especially with the audiobook. It
Love
literally,
you.
like,
I love you, Teddy Hamilton.
it's like
but-
second to last chapter
Yeah.
of the book. There's just a random narrator switch. I would have rather the audiobook narrator do the awful, like, same voice that she does for any man and any dragon in the book than just, like, switch narrators.
Yeah.
Which that voice was awful. For anyone reading the audiobook, I'm sure that you know,
I-
but she's like, I'm a dragon.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Teddy. I was like, I like Teddy.
No.
Hamilton. He's like the male narrator for a lot of romance audiobooks.
No, I'm talking about the voice that the female narrator did
Yeah,
for
no,
the
I know.
dragons. She also does for, like, any male character
Mhm.
as well. We will scorch their bones and eat their flesh. Or she's like, your slick heat is awesome.
Our camera's gonna overheat soon, so we'll wrap it up. We'll give you our final thoughts and feelings, because that's kind of where the book fucking ends. Hayden, what would you rate this on a scale of 0 to 5 stars?
This would have to be a 2-star for me. I guess, like, it wasn't the worst experience that I've ever had. I guess I can't give it a 1-star, but it's, like, borderline. Like, if there was, like, a 1.5 for me...
If there was like a
it would be
book
that,
equivalent
because
of...
here's the thing, for me, it's not that the sentence structure is bad or anything like that, but there are, like, so many little things that irritate me to the point of hating this, hating this experience, because I'm just like irritated. It's like 100 of little bees things,
Yeah, I have to agree. I gave it 3 stars the first time because I like barely paid attention. Now that I was strapped the fuck in,
And you had me.
strapped the fuck on, I'm gonna give it 2 stars as well. I did not enjoy this very much. Am I gonna read the second book? Yeah, I am. Okay, I didn't say that I was smart, but
I know that you're gonna make me read it too.
I didn't say that. Do people want to see us read the second book?
Oh God.
Let
I
us-
think people
mean-
like to see me suffer. I think that's what people like. I think they like to see me squirm and
I
be
thought you were
upset.
gonna say squirt, but yeah. I didn't know where you were going with that.
Alrighty.
Yeah, they do. They like to see you squirm. On that note, this has been so fun, and I hope that y'all enjoyed this day of Janmas. Let us know in the comments down below what you'd like to see us read next. Obviously, we can read Iron Flame if you like. We could also read anything else under the sun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we sure could.
we sure could.
Here's the thing, I'm probably not gonna enjoy it, like, kind of no matter what, for
Yeah.
this particular series of videos, like, I think kind of the point is it has to be a dumb bitch,
Oh yeah. Bye, let's
Good
get there.
lord, did we find one.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be so smart.
It's the ombre that really gets me. Love y'all so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Mwah.